All right, let's take a trip way back in time, like almost 1700 years back, to find one of the oldest and honestly most surprising Easter sermons you've ever heard of. This isn't about quiet, solemn reflection. No, this is a story about cosmic trickery and a whole lot of loud, joyous celebration. So, think about the Easter story you know. It probably focuses a lot on sacrifice, right? The idea that a debt had to be paid for sin. But what if one of the earliest ways Christians understood it was completely different? What if it wasn't a legal transaction at all, but more like a cosmic heist, where hell itself gets absolutely royally conned? Okay, so the mind behind this wild sermon, a guy named St. John Chrysostom. Now, this wasn't just some local preacher. We're talking about the Archbishop of Constantinople back in the 4th century. Think of Constantinople as the new Rome. It was the beating heart of the Roman Empire, a total pressure cooker for Christian ideas. The faith was going from this persecuted little group to the official religion of the empire, and it was guys like Chrysostom who were basically writing the rule book, figuring out what the core beliefs were. His teachings didn't just influence a few people, they literally forged the doctrine of the early church. And this brings us right to a heart of his message. It's a way of thinking that sounds, well, less like a quiet church service and a lot more like some kind of mythological epic. The whole thing is called Christus Victor. And yeah, it is all about a brilliant trick played on hell. Okay, let's break this down because it's a huge shift in thinking. Atonement, that's just the fancy church word for how does this whole thing actually save people? Now, a lot of us are probably used to hearing a sort of legal model. Humans sinned, we owe a debt, and Jesus' death is the payment that squares things up. But Chrysostom, he's all about this Christus Victor model. And in this story, the goal isn't settling a debt, it's winning a war. It's not a legal transaction, it's a full-on triumphant liberation. So, Christ is victor. It's Latin, and it literally just means Christ is victorious. The whole point, the entire focus, is on that triumph. The idea here is that Jesus' main mission wasn't to appease God, but to march right up to the forces holding us captive, sin, death, evil itself, and completely and utterly defeat them. And this is how this cosmic heist actually went down. Think of it in 4 steps. First, the disguise. Jesus shows up on Earth looking just like any other mortal human. Then you've got the bait. Death sees this guy, thinks he's just another sinner, and takes the bait, dragging him down to hell. Classic mistake. Because then comes the big reveal. The disguise is dropped. Jesus reveals who he really is, and get this, from inside the enemy's fortress. He unleashes the full power of God, completely shattering hell's grip on everything from the inside out. It's the ultimate Trojan horse. Now, Chrysostom hangs his entire argument on this one single, perfect word he finds in a prophecy from the book of Isaiah, embittered. I want you to picture the villain in a movie. At the very end when the hero reveals the master plan and the villain realizes they've been played the whole time, that look on their face, that feeling of being completely and totally outsmarted, that is the exact emotion Chrysostom is zeroing in on. And this is so key. The idea is that hell isn't just defeated, it's resentful. It's bitter. Because it got tricked, it was outsmarted, it was made to look like a complete fool. Chrysostom focuses on that specific feeling to really drive home how total this victory was. This wasn't just a battle that was won. This was a complete and utter humiliation of the enemy. And then Chrysostom launches into this amazing rhythmic refrain that was designed to be chanted by everyone. He builds this incredible momentum. He shouts, hell was embittered because it was mocked. Laughed at. Its power was shown to be a total sham. And then it was embittered because it was purged, just scoured clean, its authority completely wiped out. And finally, it was embittered because it was bound in chains. The victory couldn't be more absolute. Hell isn't just beaten, it's imprisoned, totally powerless. You can feel how this powerful repetition would just drill the certainty of that victory deep into the hearts of every single person in the room. But okay, this is where the story gets even more interesting, if you can believe it. Because this wasn't some lecture you just sat and listened to quietly. Oh no, this was a sermon that you could actually feel. See, Chrysostom basically engineered this thing to be a fully interactive performance. He was smart. He knew that for people to really get the massive scale of this cosmic victory, they couldn't just think about it. They had to participate.
They had to get involved with their entire bodies, not just their brains.
And here's how it actually worked. It was brilliant. Anytime the preacher said the word death or dead, the entire congregation would just stomp their feet as loud as they could. It was a physical way of acting out Christ literally crushing hell underfoot. And when they heard the words embittered or risen, they'd shout them right back in unison. This is so far from just passively listening, right? This is active, full-body worship.
And you have to imagine the purpose behind all this. Stomping and shouting together would have created this absolutely electric atmosphere of shared joy. Just for a moment, it didn't matter if you were rich or poor, a lifelong believer, or someone just barely hanging on. All those social barriers just vanished. Everyone was united in this one single triumphant experience. You weren't just hearing about the victory, you were performing it together as one body.
So you might be thinking, okay, this ancient, noisy tradition is cool, but what does it have to do with us today? Is it just some weird historical footnote? Absolutely not. In fact, this kind of participatory ritual has roots that are even older than Christianity itself. Take the Jewish festival of Purim. When the book of Esther is read aloud, every single time the villain's name, Haman, is mentioned, the whole congregation just erupts. They stomp, they boo, they shake these little noisemakers called groggers, and the whole point is to symbolically blot out his name from memory. It's the exact same principle at work, using your body, using sound and action to participate in the defeat of evil. And here's the really wild part. This sermon isn't some dusty artifact in a museum. It is very much alive. To this day, in Eastern Orthodox churches and other traditions all over the world, this exact sermon is read as a core part of the big Easter service. And yes, that often includes all the stomping and shouting. So this ancient practice actually gives us some really powerful ideas for worship today. I mean, imagine churches bringing in responsive readings of keywords like risen. Or what if an entire congregation did a single unified stomp on Easter to symbolize victory over death? It's about shifting the focus of the sermon to that story of triumph and liberation, and using that kind of repetition to build a sense of shared anticipation and joy. It's a way to maybe recapture some of that amazing energy that lit up those 4th century churches. And that really leaves us with one last big question to think about. You know, we live in a time where faith is often seen as a very quiet, internal, kind of intellectual thing. But this ancient sermon really challenges that. It asks us, how would our worship change? How much deeper could our joy be if we remembered how to celebrate this victory not just with our minds, but with our entire bodies?